It is spring 1337, and in the North African city of Tlemcen, chaos and carnage reigns through the streets and every house. After a hard-fought war that has whipped across the sands and hills from Marrakesh to Constantine, the Marinid ruler of Morocco, Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn Othman, has captured the city and brought down his hated rival, Ibn Tashufin of the Zayanids. Now, lest he be accused of using his sword only on fellow believers, hundreds of thousands of whom have died at his hands in the still red-run dunes and streets, he swears on the Quran that he will soon set his tents before the gates of Christian Seville. His jihad is aimed at the very heart of the three great Iberian kingdoms, Castile, Portugal, and Aragon, all of whom have conducted raids and seizures of the dwindling territories of the still opulent but last surviving Islamic kingdom on the peninsula, Granada. For their part, the three kings of the Iberian Christian kingdoms, Alfonso IV of Portugal, Pedro IV of Aragon, and Alfonso XI of Castile, are all more than aware of the threat that comes from the ominous power lying over the glistening blue waters of Gibraltar, and they ready themselves in turn. Letters of appeal are sent north and east to Rome and France. A crusade of the bravest knights in Europe will meet the warriors of the African desert. The coming conflict will be a clash of civilizations in epic magnitude and scale, and the fate of the land both religions consider holy territory will reach the brink of irreversible destiny. Any strategic advantage that can be garnered by the Christian kingdoms from the necessity of Al-Hasan having to move his armies across the ocean is nullified by the Granadan control of Gibraltar, won after a grueling campaign 4 years previous. Such was the hatred between the Christian and Islamic powers at the time that the conqueror of Gibraltar, Muhammad IV of Granada, was assassinated in the immediate aftermath of his successful settlement with Alfonso XI that year. Muhammad had dined and accepted the gift of a suit of clothes from Alfonso, and the two men agreed that Granada would continue to pay tribute to Castile, but it would also maintain control of Gibraltar. This was a grievous crime in the eye of the hardliners, and Muhammad IV's life had been taken as a result. Muhammad's success in his campaign to capture Gibraltar had been made possible by the presence of thousands of North African Marinid troops under the command of Al-Hasan's son, the formidable Abu Malik Abd al-Wahid, and it is to his capable sire that Al-Hasan turns again in this summer of 1337 for this new jihad, as the seasonal warmth begins to blow across the land with the sharky winds from the southeast. Across the sea, merchants and travelers from the south bring news to Toledo that Abu Malik has 8,000 mounted warriors in his complement, officially deployed to rotate with the existing Marinid garrisons in Granada, but in reality, they are the spear point of the new invasion. Knowing this, Alfonso dispatches Admiral Alfonso Joffre Tenorio with a force to the straits, giving him orders to prevent crossings from the Marinid heartland. At the same time, he signs an agreement with Pedro IV of Aragon to allow troops to pass south from Valencia through Castilian lands to the fighting, as well as coordinate an initial fleet of 10 Aragonese galleys with the 20 Castilian at Gibraltar. Pedro has his own signed agreements with both Granada and the Marinids, but he is under no illusion that the lands of Aragon are also in the sights of the looming invasion. It is expected that Yusuf I of Granada, who is looking forward with relish to the arrival of his African allies in force, will be able to provide up to 20,000 troops to the Marinid cause. While the Castilian and Aragonese fleets move into position, and their kings appeal to the Pope for an increase in the church remittances and taxes that they will need to fund this new war, Abu Malik crosses the straits seemingly unhindered and moves to his de facto capital of Ronda, there to begin the campaign in his father's name against the infidels. In spring 1339, his armed bands burst out from the city and into the precincts of the Christian kings, spreading fire and despoliation to the misery of the inhabitants wherever they set foot. Not to be outdone and to give back every bit as much as they receive, Alfonso and his nobles counter, and the king pillages Antequera, Archidona, and even Ronda itself as the summer winds on. From Alcantara de Xúquer, the king's premier in the region, Gonzalo Martinez, commits his own razzias in Locubin and Alcalá de Benzaide, even firing the regions of Granada itself at Priego. The pitch of attacks from both sides accelerates even further, with Yusuf of Granada moving forth in the face of these forays and leading a force to Sils and placing it under siege, only to be routed there by Alfonso Méndez de Guzmán of Santiago. By this time, Abu Malik is at Algeciras, and he ventures forth once more and brings ruin on Medina Sidonia, Jerez, and Lebrija. And then, in answer to the attacks on the Granada hinterland, he sends a force to plunder the suburbs and outlying regions of Seville. There, Gonzalo Martinez joins his host with the local forces of the city, and they ride to oust the marauders, running them fully back to the camp of their prince of the Marinids, who then retreats toward the area of Alcalá de los Gajuls. It is possible that after several days' ride, Abu Malik believes he has lost his pursuers, and he and his men camp at the Albariti River, drawing water and plotting their next strike over campfires of roasting meat and sweet fruits. The next morning, however, as the dawn breaks over the sky, his sentries and pickets are overwhelmed, and Martinez and his mounted knights scream into the camp, howling the names of their city and king. The Marinids attempt to fight back, but the attack is too sudden, too quick, and too strong. His men break and run around him, a sure path to slaughter, as any commander knows, and Abu Malik bravely attempts to stand his ground and rally them to hold theirs, but it is to no avail. The son of the Emir of Morocco is cut down in the Spanish undergrowth, and the Castilians have their first great prize of the new war. What happens in the aftermath is both astonishing and bewildering for the momentarily elated peoples of the Christian kingdoms. A feud between Gonzalo Martinez and Alfonso Méndez de Guzmán of Santiago spills into the royal court of Castile. As Guzmán is the brother of Alfonso XI's mistress, it is Martinez's contention that the king is taking the part of his rival. In the wake of his great victory over Abu Malik, he refuses to come into the presence of the king and attempts to defect to the Portuguese court. Alfonso of Portugal, who is Alfonso XI's father-in-law but does not wish to become involved in Castilian squabbles, refuses him sanctuary, so Martinez scandalously throws in his lot with Yusuf of Granada. When he is caught by the forces of Alfonso, death is inevitable, and the king has his corpse burned for good measure. Such is his fury that he is deaf even to the pleas of the Pope for the sparing of the formerly great man's life. Worse is to come. Abu al-Hasan celebrates the death of his son as a martyr, but his intention is to fully avenge himself on those that laid him low, and he pursues his mission with an unmatched zeal. Tenorio is still holding the straits, but sustaining an allied fleet indefinitely is costly and onerous work, and so far Alfonso of Portugal has yet to provide any funds or material to the cause. In spring 1340, a huge fleet of 60 galleys and 250 transports and other vessels swoops across from the African coast toward Gibraltar. The number of galleys is at least twice as large as those that Tenorio can call on, but the Castilian nevertheless attempts to block the invasion force from landing at Gibraltar. Finding them already in the vicinity of the rock, he attempts to hold them there, but a storm blows his ships from their positions, and the Marinids make their way to Algeciras. Tenorio is crestfallen. In spite of rumors questioning the admiral's ability and character, Alfonso unwaveringly sends him half a dozen galleys as reinforcement, and the admiral tries again. The result is a catastrophe for the Spanish kingdoms and a triumph for the Marinids. Tenorio forms a line before Algeciras, and Al-Hasan's captains sail out to meet him. Still outnumbered by the enemy, the combined Castilian fleet battle the 44 galleys and 35 other ships of the Emirate, but they fail to fight adequately together as a unit, and their reduced numbers due to the long months at sea begins to tell. The Marinid ships have 300 to 400 men-at-arms and 200 archers and crossbowmen on board each vessel, a veritable barracks on the waves, and numbers and cooperation are undeniable. The struggle is fierce and vicious, and Tenorio dies with his sword in one hand and the flag of his king in the other. More than 25 Castilian galleys are captured, while 10 more scramble to Cartagena and another 5 to Tarifa. Alfonso's navy has effectively ceased to exist as a legitimate fighting force in the conflict. With the deaths of Abu Malik and now Tenorio, both sides are even, and the two monarchs ready themselves for the grim business of campaign and death. Alfonso begins a desperate drive of rebuilding and appeals to allies. His wife, Maria, Queen of Portugal, intercedes with her father to help her husband, and the Portuguese court sends 20 galleys to aid the Castilian reconstruction project. These are added to the 5 galleys still under Alfonso's command, as well as 15 refurbished craft and new ships of the line, plus a dozen carracks. Pedro of Aragon pleads poverty and supplies no new ships until Alfonso sends him substantive payments, after which the Catalans give another dozen galleys on the condition that they can only be maintained for 3 months. Through the Pope, Alfonso also approaches the Genoese, who are well known to favour the number of coins in question rather than the cause and beliefs of their employer. For the extraordinary sum of 800 gold florins a ship, the Doge of Genoa, Simon Boccanegra, sends 15 galleys with the promise of more if Alfonso can provide the fees. Alfonso is mortgaging his kingdom to the very limits of his financial wherewithal, scooping up the taxes for the best part of the forthcoming decade from both his own people and the church for the life-or-death campaign on the horizon. His re-energized and victualled navies are still not in place by August when Abu Hasan's army begins crossing the straits and landing unopposed in the shadow of Gibraltar. Word soon spreads north from the Granada Emirate. The King of Morocco is leading an army of 40,000 knights and 400,000 foot soldiers. It is a wave that will break the Christian kingdoms one and all, and they will be subsumed by its sheer size in the same manner that the ocean tide buffets and tosses pebbles on the foam. The King of Castile and the King of Portugal put their names and their sacred royal seals to an agreement. Neither man will sign a separate peace with the invader that has sent word to all who can hear that he intends to destroy them. Alfonso also sends warning to Pedro of Aragon in the hope that some assistance will come from Catalonia. From Pope Benedict XII, a declaration of crusade is issued to all of the Iberian regions and beyond, and Alfonso is supplied with a papal banner to carry at the head of his army. All is set when in late September Abu Hasan appears before the walls of Tarifa, the Castilian outpost clinging to the most southern coast of the peninsula, captured by Sancho IV some 50 years earlier. Now, Abu Hasan intends to vaporize this abscess that continually interferes with the shipping and supply of both Morocco and Granada. When his huge army appears at the walls and shows the town's defenders his 20 ferocious artillery pieces, the Castilians mock his threats and wave their blades, telling him that they are still red with the blood of his son. Abu Hassan's fury tastes like bile in his throat, and he vows to reduce the town and its inhabitants to rubble and corpses. A quick breach in the wall gives him the confidence that his breakthrough will quickly come, and he orders his navy to enter seasonal furloughs, keeping just a dozen galleys on hand to screen the siege. After all, he reasons, the Castilian navy is no more. While Tarifa is battered to the south, Alfonso holds a council of war in Seville. He castigates those who suggest leaving the town to its fate, and instead he gives orders that his army muster and prepare for the march. Queen Maria sends another appeal to her father, and word returns that Alfonso is on his way with a second force. Back at Tarifa, the garrison and its people are stoutly holding their home against the invader, fighting off the vicious and numerous attacks that stream through the breach in the walls. But the Crusader cause suffers another maritime reversal when 9 galleys are hit by a storm. The ships are scattered, and many of the sailors wash up on the Granada and Marinid-controlled coasts, where they are compelled to convert to Islam or die. When the people of Tarifa refuse another call to surrender, Abu Hassan has those sailors who refuse to renounce their faith brought before the walls and executed on the spot. While their blood flows over the scrub, the kings of Portugal and Castile convene at Seville and on the 16th of October march out, Alfonso's attendants carrying the papal banner of crusade, while Alfonso holds aloft a piece of the true cross, the very timber on which Christ was crucified. So armored, they send word to Abu Hassan and Yusuf of Granada that they intend to fight them. The emirs readily agree to the terms. There is no subterfuge or deception in either campaign strategy. Both sides are willing to risk all in a straight battle on the field. When the Crusader army passes Jerez less than a week later, they are met at the mouth of the Guadalete River by a Catalan fleet. But though it provides supply and naval support, it is funded entirely by Alfonso, as is almost the entire campaign. The Castilian monarch has pawned royal jewels, but still only possesses the funds to keep his allied army on campaign for a fortnight. Hence the need for a decisive encounter with the autocrat of the Marinids, and a sharp end to the invasion. The Crusader army winds on south until it arrives several miles from Tarifa and pitches its camp on a stretch of high ground known as La Pena del Ciervo. Digging in, they look over toward the Marinid and Granadan camps and see plumes of smoke rising from near the walls. Their first thought is that it is coming from the town itself, and Abu Hassan's forces have breached the walls. But when the units of the army before the city begin to move away from the walls and reposition themselves on the hills opposing the Crusader army, it becomes apparent that Abu Hassan is actually burning his siege equipment lest it fall into the hands of the enemy. The emir also refuses to send away the women and children of the camp, arguing that the men will fight all the harder if they are present. And in any case, should their cause lose the battle, they will all find their destination to be heaven. Sentiments on both sides are equally hardline. Alfonso gives word to his subordinates that he intends to give battle the very next day. The Marinid and Granadan army presume the same, but just as they are about to settle down for the evening, there is a clamour. Alfonso orders 5,000 of his men, 1,000 knights with the remainder made up of infantry, to join with the Tarifa defenders. The advance is so quick and unexpected that the special force glides around the 3,000 mounted besiegers sent to intercept them, crosses the Salado, and reaches the cover of the Tarifa battlements and its archers before the Marinids and Granadans can catch up with them. Abu Hassan is already meditating in his tent, and ominously for the Marinid cause, no one is prepared to tell their king the ill news. He remains ignorant of the failure to catch such a significant number of enemy personnel. Priests in the Castilian army begin hearing confessions and granting absolution for sins. The next morning, the Crusader army and its two kings hear Mass and take the Holy Sacrament before strapping on their armor and riding forth. 8,000 knights and 12,000 infantry are deployed in 4 main bodies. The vanguard is led by the formidable and mercurial magnate Juan Manuel, whose daughter Constanza had been married to Alfonso, but who has fallen out with the king more times than anyone can number. On occasion, he has even allied himself with the Granadans and aided their cause, especially during the loss of Gibraltar years before. Now, seemingly, he has pledged himself and his sword to the king and a Christian mission, and the monarch has placed his faith in him in return. Alfonso Méndez de Guzmán of Santiago is second in command of the vanguard under Manuel, and with him are the great and noble of Castilian society, Lord Juan Núñez de Lara, another one-time renegade against the crown. Behind this spear point, Alfonso himself sits astride his horse, Valencia, surrounded by his retinue and royal guard, high churchmen, court knights, and the militia of various urban centers. The rearguard of the Crusader army is commanded by Gonzalo de Aguilar of Cordoba, and alongside him is Pedro Núñez de Guzmán of Leon. The right wing of the army is led by Alva Pérez de Guzmán, while the King of Portugal leads the left, 1,000 of his own knights along with 3,000 of Alfonso's, ready to charge at the King of Granada. Just inside of them, Basque and Asturian infantry link the center and left wing. The crusading holy orders of Iberia are also heavily present amongst the king's forces, including the Order of Santiago under Alfonso Méndez in the vanguard, the Order of Calatrava, the Order of Alcantara, and the Portuguese Order of Avis fighting under Alfonso on the left wing. In the opposite camp, among the devout of Al-Andalus and Africa, there are also prayers and invocations to the Almighty. Just as Alfonso's bishops chant the sacred tones of Salve Regina, so the imams of Granada and Mauritania read aloud the verses of the Quran. Abu Hassan ties a special container holding a cloth cutting that had been the possession of Muhammad around his neck. Abu Hassan and Yusuf venture forth, their aim being to halt the oncoming Crusaders at the Salado. They are occupying every crossing, and their orders and briefs are to end the life of any man that dares cross in the coming hours. Yusuf commands the right wing of their army on a series of advantageous slopes, opposite Alfonso of Portugal, while Abu Hassan is more to the center, though not exactly in front of Alfonso of Castile's battalions. Abu Hassan's son Umar takes command of the forces before Alfonso of Santiago and Juan de Lara on the left wing. Abu Hassan orders that Hamu al-Azri take command of a rear reserve of 6,000 men, to be called into action as and when the situation warrants their presence. With their camp on high ground outside the town, Abu Hassan and Yusuf can see the Crusaders in hordes along the shore and inland on a line running northeast. But even though they run the risk of attack from the second direction of the town, their own numbers are strong enough that they believe they will break any major offensive by their fellow kings, and then return to the business of reducing Tarifa. The Crusader maneuvers begin with a general advance, Juan Manuel bringing his vanguard to the banks of the river, where they encounter mounted horse archers and halt under the volleys. Some of the Crusaders return fire, wishing to press forward, but Juan Manuel stays in place. Further up the line, the forces of Alfonso of Portugal similarly engage those of Yusuf of Granada, and the river there begins to run red with the blood of the fallen and the injured. For the Marinids and Granadans, they believe that this is the moment. They have held the offensive of the Crusaders, and all they must do now is allow the enemy to grind themselves down in a battle of attrition in which they cannot hope to be the victor. But Alfonso has not yet begun his attack in earnest. Frustrated at Juan Manuel's lack of aggression, he channels reserves through the ranks to come to the assistance of 800 men under the brothers Ruiz de la Vega, who have also tired of the inaction and begun to cross the old Roman bridge. At first, they push the defenders from the bridge, but the Marinids counter and almost cut off the assault force. Now, with the king's reinforcements and about 2,500 men on each side, the Castilians engage with the defenders, who hold for a time and then begin to fall back again. The breakthrough must be exploited. The Castilians begin to pour through the breach and over the river, Alfonso's standard bearer now leading the way, and the king moving at a slower pace behind. Juan Núñez de Lara and Alonso de Guzman effectively ignore Juan Manuel and leave him to his own desires. Abu Umar's company begins to fall back, retreating up the slope toward his father's camp. At the far end of the battle, Alfonso of Portugal rallies his own men by bringing forth the true cross, and they charge into the Granadans, lances and swords raised in the face of arrows, javelins, and scimitars. When the heavy knights meet the line of the lighter Granadans, the defenders lack the defensive depth to withstand their charge, and Yusuf too begins to retreat. From his higher vantage point, Abu Hassan sees this implosion of his ally, as well as that of his own son. Scorning the timidity of Yusuf, Abu Malik cites the kind of opening that only the divine hand could provide him. A gap has opened between the King of Castile and his main units, the monarch moving through the valley with only his guard contingent and some small companies. Looking to his right, Abu Hassan sees that Alfonso's vanguard and main company have now chased portions of his own forces back to their camp, and chaos is reigning through its precincts. The acrid aroma of smoke reaches his nostrils. The first of the fires have been lit, and he is sure that he can hear the screams of women. Putting that aside for the greater cause, Abu Hassan orders his companies to sweep in and attack the king, exploiting the gap. Too late do those around Alfonso realize the danger, and the marauding horsemen are upon them in minutes, firing arrows into the royal party, while the king's bodyguards raise shields to try and protect him. Nevertheless, an arrow buries itself in Valencia's saddle, causing both the animal and the sovereign to start in surprise. Alfonso, 28 years old, trained since childhood in the ways of fighting and war, and in the very prime of his life, draws his sword and spurs the horse to charge into the maw of the enemy. He is stayed only by the entreaty of the Archbishop of Toledo, who dares put his hands on the monarch's reins and pleads with him not to lose his life. Teeth bared in a battle grimace, Alfonso swings around to face the prelate, but the Archbishop gives him assurance that the battle is won. He must trust in God and keep his life. Spurning the danger, but following the bishop's advice, Alfonso raises himself in the saddle so that his men can see him, and the units nearby begin to rally to his defense. The Castilian rearguard screams forward and collides with the Marinid companies like a plough horse kicking through a barn door. Quickly, word of the king's predicament reaches the Castilian contingents fighting in the Marinid camp, and they begin to rush down the hill to aid their monarch. The sides crash, and a vicious hand-to-hand combat ranges over the field. Again, all hangs by a thread, as the royal companies rip into one another with blade and sharpened metal point. Then, a new sound joins the tumult. The gates of Tarifa open, and hundreds of fresh knights, along with thousands of supporting infantry, rush forth and join the fray. Although the presence of these fighters in Tarifa was unknown to him, and their appearance is a harbinger of imminent defeat, Abu Hassan is every bit the same warrior monarch as Alfonso, King of Castile, and he roars orders for his units to hold the line, while others turn to engage the newcomers. To his despair, however, it is too much, and those companies still fighting Alfonso see their comrades turning and withdrawing, and they take it that the Marinid army is beginning to give way. They waver in uncertainty, but resolve soon depletes, and within minutes men are abandoning the line and horsemen are turning their mounts. Abu Hassan's appeals cannot be heard, and the Marinid formation collapses, the attacks from different directions turning the rout into a slaughter. His steel determination finally overcome with hard realism, Abu Hassan joins them and quits the field. The aftermath of the defeat is bloody and horrific. The Marinid camp is turned over, plundered, and a shameful, disgusting massacre of all inhabitants, including the noble women, is carried out by the wrathful Iberians. Other units pursue Abu Hassan and the rest of the survivors through the countryside, all the way to Algeciras, and likely thousands more are cut down and killed in the stony fields and weed-filled ditches. There is no hope for Abu Hassan to resupply, for his army is shattered, and Alfonso's reconstituted navy has now retaken control of the straits, aided by the powers of Portugal and Aragon, as well as the Pope and the newly arrived Genoese. Hassan's decision to stand down his own ships now seems a grievous error. He is lucky to cross back to his own African domains, after falsely sending news of a victory so as to prevent rebellion, and live out the rest of his days there. There are few left alive from the campaign to contradict him. Yusuf returns to his Granadan fiefdom through Marbella and makes another deal with the Castilians. From now on, he and his Taifa are alone. Such are the losses at the Rio Salado, tens of thousands of men, that no North African monarch ever again attempts to establish himself as a power on the Iberian Peninsula. Rio Salado and its blood-soaked, corpse-strewn field has brought an end to the period of history that began with the first Arab invasions of Visigothic Spain 600 years before. The coming centuries will see a reversal so complete that the victors of the long conflict will eventually struggle to countenance any other possible outcome but that in which they reign as sovereign masters of their own land. If you like what you see, consider supporting my work on Patreon, and you get ad-free early access to my videos for as little as $1. You can also show your support by liking the video, commenting, and subscribing to my channel as a sacrifice to the algorithm. As always, I'll see you in the next one.